It was supposed to be a normal Monday morning. The smell of espresso filled the air as customers scrolled their phones or chatted quietly. A man in dusty jeans and a faded gray hoodie stepped into the cozy cafe on Main Street in a coastal Virginia town. His beard was long, his eyes tired but kind, his boots were well worn, clearly not the latest designer trend, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. He waited in line like everyone else, glancing at the menu with the ease of someone who already knew what he wanted. When it was finally his turn, he stepped forward with a small smile. "I'll have a black coffee, please," he said. The young barista, maybe 20 at most, looked him over with thinly veiled contempt. She gave a quick, sarcastic chuckle before leaning forward. "We don't serve people like you here," she muttered, not quite whispering. The man blinked. "Excuse me?" She rolled her eyes. "Homeless people come in all the time asking for free stuff. You want a handout, go to the shelter downtown." The room went silent. A woman at the back lowered her cup. A man typing on a laptop stopped mid-keystroke. No one said a word. Some avoided eye contact, others shook their heads, but no one stepped in. The man looked at the barista, processing her words. He didn't yell. He didn't demand anything. He just nodded politely. "Understood," he said quietly, then turned and walked out the door. What no one knew, what that barista didn't realize, was that the man she had just dismissed was David Kent, a retired Navy SEAL who had served his country with honor through 3 combat tours. He had seen more in 10 years than most people would in a lifetime. He wasn't homeless. He wasn't asking for a handout. He just wanted a cup of coffee. David had chosen a simpler life after retiring. No uniform, no medals on display, no speeches, just peace. But that peace was shattered in an instant by a cruel assumption. He didn't post about the incident. He didn't complain to management, but someone else had recorded the exchange, and that video would soon change everything. By the next morning, the town would never look at that cafe, or David, the same way again. His name was David Kent, a veteran who had served 3 combat tours overseas. He had stared danger in the face more times than he could count and had saved lives in ways he'd never speak of. Among his team, he was known as the quiet professional, strong, loyal, and fiercely disciplined. After retiring from the Navy SEALs, David chose a life far from the spotlight. He moved just outside the small Virginia town where he grew up, settling into a quiet, off-grid lifestyle. He lived in a modest cabin, grew his own food, and volunteered regularly at a local veterans center. To the few who knew him, he was humble, kind, and always ready to lend a hand. But to most people, he was just another face in the crowd, someone who blended in. David liked it that way. On that Monday morning, he wasn't seeking attention. He had just finished helping an elderly neighbor repair a fence and stopped by the cafe to grab a hot cup of coffee. His clothes were dusty, his boots worn, and his hoodie a bit faded from sun and time. But his wallet held cash, and he approached the counter with a polite smile. "I'll have a black coffee, please," he said. What happened next stunned him. The barista glanced at him and made a face. "We don't serve people like you here," she muttered. David blinked. "Excuse me?" She leaned in, louder this time. "You heard me. Try the shelter if you want a handout." The cafe fell into an awkward silence. A few customers exchanged glances, unsure if they'd heard correctly. But David didn't make a scene. He simply nodded and walked out, head high, dignity intact. He didn't know that a teenage girl sitting 2 tables over had captured the entire exchange on her phone. She'd watched the scene unfold and had recognized something in David's quiet response. Something that didn't sit right. She uploaded the video to TikTok with the caption, "Guy in a hoodie gets humiliated. Then I find out he's a Navy SEAL." That detail? It came from her older brother, who'd served with David, and had once told her about the man he called the most honorable SEAL he ever met. The video blew up overnight. Millions of views, thousands of comments. The story of a veteran shamed for how he looked was spreading like wildfire, and the world was about to find out exactly who David Kent really was. By morning, the cafe was surrounded, but not by angry protesters with signs or chants. Instead, it was quiet, almost eerily so. Because lining the parking lot were dozens of Navy SEALs, not in uniform but unmistakable in presence. They stood like statues, arms folded across their chests, boots planted firmly on the pavement. They didn't speak. They didn't raise their voices. They just stood there. Customers arriving for their morning coffee slowed their cars, confused by the silent show of force. Some parked, got out, and quickly turned back when they saw the solemn wall of men. Others stayed in their cars, watching from a distance. Across two pickup trucks parked at the entrance was a massive homemade banner that read, "We stand with David." Inside, the staff was rattled. The young barista who had insulted David was nowhere to be seen. The manager, panicked by the growing crowd outside, rushed out to try to understand what was happening. That's when one man stepped forward. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a quiet intensity that said more than words ever could. "I served with David," he said, locking eyes with the manager. "He's family, and we don't let our family be disrespected." The message didn't need repeating. It spread like wildfire. Someone filmed the scene and posted it to social media. Within hours, local news vans were setting up outside. Reporters huddled near the sidewalk, narrating the bizarre and powerful protest. The cafe owner, clearly overwhelmed, issued a statement calling the incident a misunderstanding. But by then, screenshots of the video and the barista's words were all over the internet. The clip of David being dismissed had gone viral, along with the identity of the cafe and the silent protest now taking place. As for David, he hadn't even seen the video until a friend sent it to him that morning. He sat quietly at home as he watched it play out on his phone. The moment, the humiliation, the banner, his brothers. He hadn't asked for any of it. But when he saw those men, his men, standing in the parking lot refusing to let the insult slide, something shifted inside him. He didn't smile, he didn't cry. He just stood up, put on his boots, and walked out the door. The Brotherhood had answered the call, even when he hadn't made one. The barista was suspended within hours of the video going viral. The cafe's owner took to social media to issue a formal apology, claiming the incident didn't reflect the values of their establishment and promising sensitivity retraining for all staff. But for many, including the local community, it was too little, too late. The apology felt rehearsed, like damage control, not genuine remorse. The video had already struck a nerve nationwide, particularly among military veterans and their families. The damage wasn't just to the cafe's reputation. It had tapped into something deeper, the quiet pain many service members carry long after they come home. After days of silence, David Kent finally agreed to a local interview. Sitting across from a reporter in a modest VFW hall, he spoke plainly, without anger, without demands, just with calm honesty. "I've seen the worst of humanity overseas," he began. "But what hurts more is being judged by your appearance in your own country. I didn't come here to be recognized. I just came here to live." His words weren't dramatic, but they cut deep. It wasn't just about coffee. It was about dignity, about how someone who sacrificed everything could be dismissed with a glance. That moment went viral, too. Clips from the interview spread across social media. Veterans across the country began sharing their own stories. Moments when they'd been disrespected, underestimated, or ignored. Many said they never spoke up before because they didn't want attention, only respect. The hashtag Stand With David started trending. Veterans organizations picked up the story. Even a few celebrities posted in support. News outlets ran op-eds about the quiet discrimination service members often face when they're out of uniform. Back at the cafe, business dropped sharply. Regulars stopped coming. Other local coffee shops put signs in their windows that read, "Veterans welcome here, no questions asked." As for the Navy SEALs who had shown up that morning, they didn't stay to protest. They weren't looking for revenge. But their silent show of support had left a mark. They had stood not just for David, but for every vet who's ever been treated like they didn't belong. And that message, it echoed far beyond that parking lot. In the days that followed the silent protest by David's fellow Navy SEALs, something subtle but powerful began to shift in the small coastal town. The cafe where the incident took place, once a popular morning stop for locals and tourists alike, suddenly found itself eerily quiet. Lines that once wrapped around the block vanished. Online reviews turned sour. Some loyal customers stopped coming altogether, not out of hatred, but out of principle. The cafe owner, realizing the damage, scrambled to do damage control. He posted a public apology, suspended the barista involved, and even offered free coffee to all veterans in a bid to rebuild trust. But the gesture, while appreciated by some, felt reactive. Too little, too late. The community had already spoken with their feet and their dollars. Meanwhile, a wave of local businesses stepped up to fill the void. Diners, barber shops, hardware stores, many hung new signs in their windows that read, "Veterans welcome, always." The movement spread beyond just coffee. It became a symbol of something deeper, a call for dignity, respect, and awareness. And from that energy, something unexpected was born. David, with the help of his fellow SEALs, founded a new organization, Respect First. The mission was simple but powerful: to raise awareness about the quiet sacrifices veterans make, and to challenge society to treat everyone with dignity, regardless of how they look, dress, or speak. What started as a single act of humiliation became a nationwide discussion on humility, perception, and gratitude. David was never chasing fame. In fact, he shied away from the spotlight as soon as the cameras came out. But the impact he made was undeniable. Emails poured in. Messages from veterans, families, and even complete strangers shared how the story had touched them, how they'd decided to stand up for someone in their town. Thanks to him. The cafe may have served the last bad cup of coffee David would ever try to buy, but the ripple effect reached far beyond that counter. Because in the end, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about setting a standard. One act of quiet strength, backed by a brotherhood forged in the harshest conditions imaginable, reminded an entire town, and eventually a nation, of something we too often forget. Respect is not given based on appearance. It's given because it's right. All because one man was denied a cup of coffee.